Hey everyone! Today we're talking about the Helvetians, or as the Romans called them, the Helvetii. They were a Celtic tribe that lived in what's now Switzerland around the 1st century BC, back when the Roman Republic was growing fast. The Helvetians are best known because of their run-in with Julius Caesar, who wrote about them in his book, the Gallic War. Caesar said the Helvetians were divided into 4 groups, though he only mentioned 2 by name, the Verbigani and the Tigerini. Another writer, Posidonius, talked about a few others, like the Tigeni. The most famous event in their history was when they tried to move their entire tribe to southwestern Gaul in 58 BC. That plan didn't work out, and it actually gave Caesar an excuse to begin his conquest of Gaul. After their defeat, the Helvetians became part of the Roman Empire. During the rule of Emperor Augustus, many of their old Celtic forts were turned into Roman military camps, like Vindonissa and Basileia. In AD 68, they tried to rebel, but the Romans crushed the uprising. Their land was first added to the Roman province of Gallia Belgica, then later to Germania Superior. Over time, the Helvetians adopted Roman customs and language. By the 2nd century, they were basically Roman in culture. But as the Roman Empire started to weaken, new tribes like the Alemanni and Burgundians moved into their territory. The Helvetians mixed with these newcomers, becoming part of the early people who would later form Switzerland. The name Helvetii appears in many old writings, from Caesar, Cicero, Tacitus, Pliny, and even the Greek geographer Ptolemy. Experts believe the name means something like rich in land or abundant in grasslands, which makes sense since their homeland was full of fertile plains. The oldest known mention of their name comes from a pot found in Mantua, Italy, from around 300 BC. It was inscribed with the word Helvetii, likely meaning the Helvetian. The Helvetians didn't have kings. Instead, they were led by noble families. One nobleman, Orgetorix, tried to make himself king, but got into serious trouble for it. He was supposed to be executed, though he died mysteriously before that could happen. Caesar never said exactly who ruled them, but he mentioned local leaders and officials who ran things. Before they lived in Switzerland, the Helvetians may have come from southern Germany. The historian Tacitus wrote that they once lived between the Rhine River, the Main River, and the Big Hercynian Forest. Around the late 2nd century BC, they moved south into Switzerland, probably to escape Germanic tribes moving into their old lands. Archaeologists have found a lot of evidence of Helvetian settlements in places like Zurich. Around 100 BC, they had a village there, and researchers discovered big clumps of melted Celtic coins weighing about 59 kilograms. It looks like they were melting them down for some kind of religious offering. They also had sanctuaries and lake settlements nearby, which shows how advanced and spiritual their society was. The Helvetians first met the Romans through war. Around 111 BC, some of their subgroup, the Tigerini, joined Germanic tribes like the Cimbri and Ambrones. Together they invaded parts of Gaul and even a Roman province. A Roman general named Lucius Cassius Longinus tried to stop them, but was killed in battle. His army was captured and forced to walk under a wooden yoke, a huge embarrassment for Rome. A few years later, in 105 BC, these tribes defeated another Roman army near Arausio and continued raiding across Europe. Eventually they split up. The Teutones and Ambrones went west, while the Cimbri and Tigerini crossed the Alps. But the Roman general, Gaius Marius, turned things around. He defeated the Teutones and Ambrones in 102 BC and destroyed the Cimbri the next year. The Tigerini, realizing they couldn't win, went back over the Alps and rejoined the rest of the Helvetians who had stayed in their homeland. And Caesar tells us that Orgetorix, a powerful Helvetian noble, had big plans. He wanted the whole tribe to move and to make himself king. He worked with leaders from 2 nearby tribes to try to pull off a 3-year plan that would put them all in charge. But when people found out, Orgetorix was put on trial and faced death if found guilty. He showed up at his hearing with 10,000 followers, which stopped the trial for a bit, but then he died under strange circumstances. Many thought he took his own life. Even after Orgetorix's death, the Helvetii went ahead and burned their homes in 58 BC and left their lands. They were joined by other groups like the Rorisi, Latobrigi, Telengi, and some Boy. Their aim was to settle far away among the Santones, and the easiest path led through the Roman-controlled Rhone Valley. As they moved, Caesar took steps to block them. He tore down the bridge at Geneva so the Helvetii couldn't cross easily. The Helvetii sent messengers asking for safe passage, and Caesar stalled for time while he prepared his forces. When he was ready, he refused their request. The Helvetii then tried a harder route through the Jura Mountains and crossed the Saône River. Because many of their warriors were still crossing, Caesar attacked and defeated those left on the riverbank. He said these were the Tigurini, and treated it as payback for older defeats. After that river battle, the Helvetii sent another delegation led by Divico. Divico offered to settle the Helvetia where Caesar wanted, but also warned that they would fight if he refused. Caesar asked for hostages and payments to tribes the Helvetii had hurt. Divico argued that the Helvetii did not give hostages, reminding the Romans about older events where Romans had been forced to accept humiliations. A short while later, there was fighting near Bibracte. Caesar's allies under Dumnorix lost a cavalry fight, but Caesar eventually caught up and fought a big battle at Bibracte. The Helvetici were forced to retreat, and many of their wagons and supplies were captured. They fled fast and later asked to surrender, offering hostages and weapons. During the night, about 6,000 of the Verbigini ran away, afraid they would be killed if they gave up their arms. Caesar had them caught and treated as enemies, likely sold into slavery. After the fighting, Caesar let many of the tribes go back home so they could defend the Rhine against Germanic tribes. Some groups rebuilt towns, and others were settled as allies in new places. Cicero later called the Helvetii foederati, meaning they were allies of Rome who had to give soldiers when asked, but were not Roman citizens. Caesar wrote down huge numbers for the Helvetii, hundreds of thousands of people. Modern historians think he exaggerated. Archaeology partly supports some of his story, but many sites don't show the destruction Caesar describes. Experts now estimate much lower numbers for the migrating groups. How many people were really involved will probably never be known exactly. Even though the Helvetii didn't win, the result wasn't as total a disaster as Caesar made it sound. The main group actually managed an organized retreat and reached safety a few days later. For political reasons, Caesar had plenty of reasons to make his victory look bigger. It helped his reputation and his political goals back in Rome. In the years that followed, the Helvetii sometimes fought with Rome and sometimes served as allies. The Romans founded colonies in their area and turned old Celtic towns into military bases. Over the next centuries, the Helvetii slowly took on Roman ways. Their towns, religion, and language changed as Roman power grew. Later, when the empire weakened in the 3rd century, Germanic groups moved into the region, and the old Helvetii people blended into the newcomers. The Helvetii left a long legacy. Their name lived on and became linked with the land we now call Switzerland. Even today, the Latin name Helvetia appears on Swiss coins and on the country's official Latin title, Confederatio Helvetica.